Welcome back. You're watching Taking Stock, and we are taking stock of yet another week where it was more about individual stocks than Nifty level. A lot of individual names made a lot of money. The Nifty didn't really move too much, though it ended the week in the green. But we've been talking to our guests. Jay, what about aviation? Of course, Interglobe or Indigo is the recent listing, so you may not have data. But what about other names like Jet Airways and SpiceJet? What are charts indicating there?
Yeah, I'm not positive there. I think Jet Airways has got further new lows to come through. I think the space isn't looking that attractive. I would probably look at that space as a trading opportunity rather than an investment opportunity. So let it let the short term play out. I wouldn't be too enthused about what's happening in terms of price action. I think both Jet and Spice have further decline to happen. Once that is done, we can probably look at it, because this is looking like the final leg of the descent that's pending. Once that is done, I think it will start looking positive, but I'm not positive at this point of time.
Okay, Sanjay, at 765, a lot of people said Indigo is expensive. At 1100, it's only become 50% more expensive.
I agree with you, Anuj. I think it's more or less done its ride up. May go up another 100 rupees, I don't know. It's difficult to game the last 50, 100 rupees in 1100 rupees stock. But, at the end of the day, you have to realistically look at cash flows, valuations, assets. To me, it doesn't make sense getting to buy Indigo at 1100 rupees. I may want to go in for a rent or a punt. May lose 100 rupees, may make 200 rupees, I don't know. But I wouldn't want to be having Indigo at this price in my portfolio, no.
Okay, yes, very, very expensive now. But, there's so many of these random sectors that started moving this week, Sanjay, whether it was textiles, then it was sugar, then some of the oil and gas names like GAIL came out of nowhere. Are these just trading pops, or do you see any long-term fundamental ideas in these spaces?
No, I think there are a large number of long-term fundamental ideas, because, let's try and really look at these, some of these sectors that you mentioned very clearly. They've been plagued with massive problems, both in terms of government policy, in terms of individual sectoral issues, debt, leverage balance sheets, problematic promoters. Now, most of the issues are getting sorted out because of all these issues that I mentioned. The valuations were, had gone to really down to the dumps. And in fact, rightfully so, because you were living with massive debt which is not being serviced. You had pricing power problems. You had, demand supply issues. But good part is that most of them have got into the, mode of being addressed. Government has started this on the sugar sector. Yes, I agree. A lot of people will argue they haven't done much about it. But the fact remains that, when you start to address problems, similarly on oil and gas, we've had the new policy come out. It may be halfway there, it may be two-thirds of the way there. But the good part is all these issues are getting addressed, and that's the reason why you're seeing these short moves coming in. Initially, anything that moves after a long, painful process looks like a pop, but then finally you have to dish out the winners from those sectors and bet on those, because those are the sectors which are now, these are some of the sectors now which will probably outperform over the next 2-3 years. I can't game what's going to happen in the next month or two. Like I said, market doesn't have a memory from day to day. One day sugar stocks were up, next day they were down 10%. But within sugar, there'll be one or two which will actually be able to solve its problem and move on. And similarly in oil and gas. I think oil and gas is a very exciting space now for the next 2 to 3 years. Lots of stuff has been done there. And we have favorable demand supply conditions, we have favorable oil prices. Subsidy issues, pricing issues will, get resolved over time.
But how do you decide?
So one has to start looking at them.
How do you decide which stocks to pick? Because, you could really burn your fingers badly. I mean, if you take a stock like GAIL, case in point, it's down 20-30% this year already. And sugar, we know the kind of, damage to wealth it's done over the last many years. So is it just better not to stay away?
No, I think it's very simple how to pick stocks in these kind of sectors. It's very simple. Go to a company which has least amount of problems in the balance sheet, has cash flows, or you can see foreseeable cash flows in the short term, asset rich, go and bet on it. Because sector tailwind is going to set in. Just pick up a clean balance sheet, pick up a good, promoter who will be able to manage the leverage, who has been a sector leader for a while, you will make money. If you get too complicated and to start looking at too many things, or too many stocks, then obviously it becomes very difficult which will be the winner. But just use these elementary tools that I said, there should be actual cash flows, asset rich, promoters who've been long enough, who are able to sort out the issues, sector tailwinds are coming in, and you'll make money. It's not that complicated really to make money when you see a sector coming out of its problems.
Okay, so Jay, give us some trading ideas for next week, your top long ideas and your top short ideas.
I don't have any short ideas, because it's a bit late to go short, and most of them are long ideas. If you look at something like, Chennai Petroleum, it's looking pretty interesting. We want the stock to do, a little bit of reversal from the current levels. If it does that, it's looking very interesting for the short to medium term. And we want to see the stock close above 195. Once it does that, I think we can be pretty confident that's heading back to the record highs it made in August. So we are looking at something like 265 to 280. So we want to first see close above 195 for the confirmation that the bottom is in. And if you look at something like Bajaj Corp, the hair oil company that we spoke a couple of times in the last month, we wanted to close above 430. That has happened. I think that's looking pretty impressive. We can see a 25% rally at least from current levels. I think we could see a brisk price action come through in the next couple of weeks. So these are the two stocks that's looking interesting at the moment. There are some of the auto ancillary stocks in the battery and the tire space that are also starting to look like they are trying to put in a bottom.
All right, gentlemen, we've run out of time, but thanks for joining us and taking us through all your views. That's all the time we have on this edition of Taking Stock. We'll see you again with all the market action on Monday morning.